The last thing he did was, and which we did, was discussing an Eved, because he said an Eved can't really own chametz, so there's no by your own, there's no tashbisu. So I think we're up now to the paragraph of in the second column of Chetzi Eved. So I think we finished all about Eved.
Right.
So Chetzi Eved is a very complicated thing for me to understand. So we'll see what he says. I'm not prepared. The Chetzi Eved, the Chetzi ben Chorin. Im hu Eved shel Gadol. Let's say the Chetzi Eved part belongs to a Gadol. So it's the Mishnah Achrona, which says that there's a din that the Adon has to free him, and he has the Gabi certain things as if he's already free, which is not very clear. Mishnah Achrona call Ma'aseh Yadav Shalo, that the Ma'aseh Yadav of this Chetzi Eved belongs to the Chetzi Eved Choron. It doesn't go to the Adon. Ayin Tos is getting because he's going to be freed. Ayin Tos is getting Membeis on the days Membeis went out there in Moscow Yom Im Kain Masha Yeshlo Harei Shlo. So whatever he owns is his. So he Chetzi Eved Ben Choron, even mitzad the Chetzi Eved part, can have chametz. That's by a Chetzi Eved. The Chetzi Shiva, Chetzi Bas Baron, but you're not mechuyev to, and the Chetzi Eved, Chetzi Ben Choron, you're mechuyev to free up, Puravu and Shabbos. But the Chetzi Shiva, the Chetzi Bas Baron, you're not mechuyev to free. Ain't kofin. You're not kofin for the Adon to free her.
So you said you're not kofin because of Puravu and Shabbos. I mean, even though if they're chiv of Shabbos, we're not kofin for Shabbos.
Oh, afilu Eved shel Katan, or even if it's an Eved by a male Chetzi Eved, but the Eved part belongs to a Katan, so that you're not kofin for the Katan to free him. The ain't kofin. Mavur Sham, and it says the Yom Shel Rabel the Rabel, the Yom Shel Atzon Atzon. So what do you do if he's a Chetzi Eved? You split it up in days. Im Kain, so it's going to come out Im Chol Yudalad B'Yom Shel Rabel. If the 14th day of Nisan comes out that day belongs to the Rebbe, the Nosein Lo Chametz, and someone gives him the Chetzi Eved Chametz, the Shach Rabba belongs to the Chetzi Eved parts belongs to the Rabbo. Im Kain Eino Shalo, so it's not his, it belongs to the Rabbo. But Eino Mitzuva Al Tashbisu, so he's not going to have a mitzvah because he's learning Tashbisus like Bal Yerod, it has to be yours. Umutter Lecho, in other words, that day he's looking at it as if that day he's completely the Rebbe's, because the Yud Dalet he's working for the Rebbe, so even, in other words, Yud Gimel he's for himself, and Yud Dalet he's for the Rebbe. So therefore, whatever he gets on Yud Dalet belongs to the Rebbe, so there's no Tashbis, and there's no Bal Yerod. So therefore he says, and Mutter Lecho Chametz Laposkin Reb Shimon, because he said Reb Shimon held that there was no lava or Isra on of Chametz, there was only a din of Tashbisu. And if you don't own the Chametz, there's no Tashbisu. The Minan Sham begin Inyan Isura Lo Apalpi, the Minan Sham begin that this whole din of splitting up each day is not Linyan Isurin, Lo Minan. The Ainam Miskalik Linyan Isur. He says that as far as Isser, we can't say one day he's an Eved and one day he's a Ben Chorin. We come up, is something which is straight Isser. But Isser, Talab and Mammon, over here, the Isser of Tashbisu and Bayirad depends on who owns it. The Isser is not a straight Isser, it's an Isser depends on whose Mammon it is. He come up, he says, the Isser, Talab and Mammon, Kihak, the Torah Azar, Al Kolach, Yisrael, Al Shalom, Dafka, the din of Tashbisu and Bayirad on his, and there is no Azara Chametz of someone else. In Kain Kivad Chametz Habi Shalo, Einu Muzir Al Ha'esei. But Memela Mutter Lecho, and therefore he's going to be allowed to eat it because he's not mechuyev. The only issue to eat it is al Tashbisu, and he's not mechuyev in Tashbisu.
I'm bothered by something. Yeah. This guy's been working for a week, right? He has his own money, so Sunday he earned for himself, Monday it's to the Rebbe. But the stuff he earned on Sunday still belongs to him.
No.
It doesn't belong to him anymore?
No.
Belongs. So the fact that, so then...
It's like when you get an Eved, whatever they ever had.
So every day it goes to the...
Yeah, but I don't know how it works. I can't help you much.
So eventually the Adon gets everything.
Well, that's no good because he's going to bring exosim. Yesh lo chametz miyom esmo, which is your question. What if he had chametz on the day before? Shohaya la'asa, which was his. Ayin ksos achos siman reish mem tefsif tambeis pilpul b'seh. In other words, what I'm telling you now, it's not so clear.
Right. Okay.
Right. B'chetz yoev b'chetz ben choranim, but b'yom shel rabo kana rabo pim ma shalom b'yom shel aso. That's exosis. Shaila has a big pilpul. Maybe b'shem Yerushalmi get in Perik Dalet. The Rebbe Zochel, the Rebbe is Zochet, right? The Shas Tila near the Lo Zochel. They ain't come to come. He says he's not going to go into that Shiloh. So therefore, he was only discussing if someone gave him chametz on Yud Daled, and if someone gave him chametz on Yud Gimel, he says it's going to be totally in this whole pilpul of exosis, which seems to make it a focus for Babli and Yerushalmi. Al Kol Panim Tali V'Tuk Tesum Yesh L'Chelik Masmo. So what if he got chametz on Yud Gimel, it's going to depend on this machokas Rishalmi and Bavli v'Kalahavi. When you buy Rabbi Matzi, it's very much on the common. As far as when it comes to the dinner by Rabbi Matzi, I'm going to go into it when I speak about by Rabbi Matzi. Here he's only discussing Teshpisu Erev Pesach.
It's also interesting because what was all bothering me is Teshpisu has two aspects to it. One is the Mammon aspect, one is the Yisur aspect. So
yeah, but he says the Yisur is telling the Mammon. There is no Yisur.
And you owning it, but the fact is the Yisur, let's say it was the other way around. It was
Yud Daled was
Yud
Ben
Daled
Thorin Day.
Yeah, Yud Daled was your day, right? So the fact it was the Evid's day.
So then he was a Ben Thorin.
Then he's a Ben Thorin. So that which he got yesterday, which is owned by the Adam, he has no chiyuv tashpisu on, but he still can't.
But whatever he gets today, well, he'll have a chiyuv tashpisu on.
Right, but does he have? Do you have the isser of? But okay, so I guess this is another question. According to what he's been saying, if tashpisu only an isser on you eating your own chametz, or apply to?
Yeah, well, no, he's saying tashpisu. We're going according to Reb Shimon. There is no isser of eating chametz midaraisa.
Right.
Anyone's chametz erev Pesach.
Right.
There's no isser hana. There's no isser achila. The only thing, the only reason they're including chiyuv tashpisu, and tashpisu makes it that you can't eat it because you're not doing tashpisu, or it's an isser essay tashpisu and not eating it. But it all stems from the chiyuv of tashpisu. And if it's not your chametz, he's saying there is no tashpisu, so there is no isser.
So there's no isser in eating someone else's chametz.
Right.
But the process of eating it might be a kinyan on it.
The process of eating it might be. He says it usually is a kinyan, but he said but it's not a kinyan.
No, but if it's chatzi evet chatzi ben chorin, and it's a day that he's a chatzi ben chorin, then it's like any other person. He might be committed for that day, and his tashbis would work on it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll call upon him. He says the shaila of the yesterday's comments in the case where he said Evid Yudalad is totally bepluktaz yesh l'chelik miyasmo v'kal l'havin. When you buy raw by matzah, he's pouring years Hashem l'kamen when he discusses buy raw by matzah. So now he's finished with chatzi evid ben chatzi b'chayim. It's a very complicated issue of understanding chatzi evid chatzi ben chayim in this whole Indian of one day this, one day that. What is that? A takana d'Rabbanan? It's not very clear how that works, and I'm not clear, so I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I thought that it was especially with this, that it's because of koach lesson, the koach lesson in mammon. So
the cheresh of a cotton, because he's going now like he does with all mitzvahs, who's chayiv and tashbis or not. He says the cheresh of a cotton, p'turim mitzvah, like any mitzvah, the lab b'nei mitzvahs nenu b'chol Torah. Being cut and matzah chametz, let's say a cotton finds chametz, and the din is the mitzias chereshot of a cotton ein of shalom min atarik mavur b'shas gen daf and tesna beis b'chosh mitzvah simanayim reishif alav im kain lahaposkin Rabbi Shimon that erev Pesach there is no isuri deraisa, there's only din of tashbitu mutter lachilu chametz b'zeh erev Pesach. It doesn't belong to the chametz. According to Torah, what the cotton found is not his min Torah. So therefore, it's like someone else's chametz, and there's no din of tashbisu, so you can feed it to him because he's not being over tashbisu because he's not mechuyev in tashbisu. After asur lachilu davar asur yadayim, even though normally something asur, even though it's a kan, you're not allowed to be machal an isur two-way kan. But he says this is not awesome. Mikol makom ein kan isur b'yirah. There's no problem with b'yirah. Deina chametz shalo. V'afilu gadol b'chi hay gavna ein musar. And even if it would be gadol, but it's not your chametz, you don't have b'yirah, you don't have tashbisu. V'af midrabanan havish lo. And even though the Rabbanan did say that if a cotton finds a mitzvah, if he's smart enough, he could be zocha in midrabanan in this matana. So his chametz in rabbanan. After ena musar ela midrabanan. So you could argue, yeah, but it's only his midrabanan. So his inyan of not having this chametz and getting rid of it is only the rabbanan. V'isad the rabbanan mutar lachil b'yadayim, which is a machlokas rishoni, but it's a Rashba that says you're allowed to be machal and it's a rabbanan to a cotton. Rambam holds you can't, but the Rashba says you could.
And in this situation, it's the cottons, but why does that make it the cotton being an issur of tashbisa? There was a note he said, and
he's saying since it's the cotton's chametz midrabanan, so midrabanan will have a din of tashbisa.
Because of chinuch? I mean, is that, in other words, where the fact is midrabanan is his, but that doesn't mean the cotton is mechuyev mitzvahs. It's like, is it because of chinuch? Therefore,
I thought he meant that's chinuch.
Which als chinuch, because als chinuch it makes it more. It for sure makes a bigger problem. Halachik will be a dime, because we'll say als chinuch there'll be problems with being machal in many ways.
Well, that's only the father. We pass when the father has a chinuch, when someone else can be machal be a dime. In other words, when the Rashba says you can be machal unless they're banan to a kain, he's talking about someone else, but not the father, because the father has to worry about chinuch.
Because he just seems to make this.
Because you can see, he says, Chef Shalom, he said, you could argue with me and say, Kivan da kopanim a mama numen rabbanan, since Rabbanan did make his mammon, him kain shuv over best min Torah, davi mammon shalom. That's the whole shal if a king Rabbanan helps for a deraisa. It could be the power of the Rabbanan when they gave it to him, now it belongs to him in a deraisa.
But he's over be'asig.
Then, what? Shuv over be'asig, there's a din of touch pisu on it.
On the cotton, that's what's
L'gabi b'machal b'yadayim. In other words, before he was saying you can be machal b'yadayim because he's not shaykh to any deraisas, only the Rabbanan. But over here, he is shaykh. It's like every deraisa that you can't be machal b'yadayim, even though he's not over the deraisa. Right. You can't be machal deraisa to him.
Right.
So he says here also. He says since he's calling him if you hold the king, the Rabbanan helps with the deraisa. They made it mamish his, and then they say because hefker bezin mamish makes it his. And Ramasi kind of pointing with Hebrews and this he says this Shaila the Rabbanan makes it like a deraisa. He's Ramas it many times. Oh, the Yesha Lakim Abor the common beloved by Ra speak about this Shaila more when it comes to Bayirah. So therefore he says then it could be you can't be machul be a dime because it's like any Isser deraisa you can't be machul dime even though he doesn't have the Isser.
But
means you can't be machal him in the vela be a dime, even though he doesn't have the lava of the vela.
Yeah, it's just interesting here because again, what bothered me is he doesn't have the isser of tashbisu. It's like a remove type of thing. It's his, but he
well, he doesn't have the isser. He's not over tashbisu, but
he says
why doesn't this? What's it any different than the vela?
So you're saying is by feeding him. You're being over to shpisa.
You'd be machal and this would be a dime. Just like when you feed him the vela. See, some people understand that the reason you can't be machal or cotton and isri yadayim because they understand what's wrong. He doesn't have an isri vela. What's wrong with feeding him an vela? Why would the Torah answer it? Some people that mean machal isri yadayim is mamash of the deraisa. If he doesn't have the vela, what's the story behind it? So some people say that the shita who holds and that you can't be machal b'yadayim holds that a kohen has an isser, just that he's not he's not responsible. He's not a baronching, but he does have an isser, and that's how they learn. They're prepared. Some people learn that the machlokas in the Gemara, if you can be machal b'yadayim or not, depends on this shaila. If the kohen have an isser, just he's not a baronching, or he doesn't have an isser at all. But it's not some people try to do that, but it's not the pashas, the smashma. There's an isser in machal b'yadayim, even though he doesn't have an isser.
Yeah, it just seems strange because there you're talking about chefshus shleser. No,
right. Right, you could argue,
over
but
here,
tashbis was not a chefshus shleser. So you could argue. I agree with that argument.
Yeah. And so it's a little bit different in the sense that.
Or you can't give them nevela because nevela is a chefshus shleser.
But here it's
indirect thing that he's supposed to get rid of his chametz.
Right.
He's really not supposed to, so it's not really a chefshus shleser. There's no isser from it. Right. It's very possible. But it's not so partial either that nevela is a chefshus shleser. I hope not. No, for anyone. When we say something is there are people that hold, there are a lot of Rishonim that hold that, when we use the concept, you have to always know what we mean by there's the concept of Isser Chepsa and Isser Gavra. And the Gemara says Nedorim is an Isser Chepsa, Shul is an Isser Gavra. Right. So we're trained to think that all Isurim, like Nevela, Treif, and all these things are Isser Chepsa. But a lot of Rishonim say that's not true. They say, when the Gemara says something is an Isser Chepsa, that's things like Hektish, or an Adorim, because it is Hektish, like a Korban.
Right.
To be an Isser Chepsa, it has to be, the Isser comes from the Kedusha. Something like an Isser Nevela, they call an Isser Gavra. So you have to be, it's not so clear in our terms, but Isser Chepsa and Isser Gavra means different things to different people. So when you say a Nevela is an Isser Chepsa, as far as the lumdus over here, it's the difference between that and tashbis, so I understand very well. Right. But the actual language of Isser Chepsa is a different meaning when a lot of Rishonim use Isser Chepsa. A lot of Rishonim learn Isser Chepsa is, since it's kaddish, like a korban or something like that, that's why it's also, that's called an Isser Chepsa. And nevela, the Torah didn't want you to eat nevela. Why do you call it an Isser?
Special
something to, who told you you're learning something in the nevela, it's not good to you, or something. Right. It's not so questionable, but I understand. No. Okay.
No, I was more
tashbis, it was different.
Yeah, but I understand.
This whole lineage to be macho cotton biyadayim, it's not such a passionate thing. Some people hold. The Gemara brings 3 psukim where it says in the Torah you can't be macho biyadayim. And some Rishonim hold from those 3 we learn out to all Isurim. The other Rishonim say no, it's only 3 are deraisa, and the other Isurim are all the Rabbanah. The whole din of being macho biyadayim is only Isur Rabbanah, except for the 3 cases. The 3 cases that the Mar Darshans is the pasuk by Shratzim, there's the pasuk by Dam, and the other pasuk is by Tumas Kohanim, Mahazer Gedolim Malaktani. But the Gemara only says it by those 3, and the Machlokas Rishonim is from those 3 do you learn out to call it Torah Kuba or not. And a lot of people say no, the Machal B'Yadayim is only Osir by those 3, and the rest is the Rabbanan's B'Chvar B'Hoshem. Now he says, Uveshota
Ramazti come upon.
He says this child, if a Kenyan Drabbana makes it yours deraisa, I was Ramazes many times in this Chibur. I'll explain it more, but Ezra Hashem, we say the expression Ezra Hashem, he says the expression Yesha Elokim. Simply, the common when I get to the Lav B'Bayra. Now he says V'shota ein lo mammon afilu b'das acheres makna. That was by cotton. Some people hold das acheres makna. The cotton owns it deraisa, but by shot everybody agrees he doesn't have mammon. And after Rabbanan lo tiknus chiyul shot by cotton, there was the Rabbanan that he cotton has can make a kenyan, but there was no such thing by a shota. I am chosh mishra sen reish mem gimel. Im kain mutter la'achilo, so there won't be a problem being machon chametz. He's going like Reb Shimon. We're only dealing with the isser of the tashbisa, since it's eno shalom. After us, v'hachil gam l'shota isser yadayim, even though the general isser that you can't be machon yadayim, the Gemara only says it by a cotton. The Rishonim apply it to a shota also, and that's how we paskin that the isser of machon yadayim is side by a cotton, side by shota. He says kamosh kasabti n'ma'ava. We call makom kan lo avi isser. That's to be machon isser yadayim, but this is not an isser. It's not his chametz. Ach im nafalo b'Yerusha, but let's say a shota didn't have to make a kinyan, he got to be Yerusha, so now he does own it. Oh, schar pula, or he got it as payment for his work, where I think that's also only, that's the Yerusha, so the rights, I think schar pula is only there, but I'm not sure. Havimem Shalom Minatorah. It seems to me he's learning Schar Pula is a derisa mina, is Minatorah. I wasn't sure of that. He says on the bottom that the Tosas and Sanhedrin and Reiksos. So maybe that part is not Pasha, but Yerusha he has, for sure. But he's saying clearly that Schar Pula is also his Midraisa. The Ein Kan, the Koma, he says he's not going to go into this Shiur if it's his or not. But he says, but he could, then the Chametz will be his, and then there'll be a problem of Bimachel B'Yadayim, but Tashpisu, except you're having a tiny, that's not a problem, but it's okay. How he says, but Tumtum, and she's going through all the Shitas of who's in this essay of Tashpisu or not. Now he's finished with Chereshot of the Cotton, and now he's up to a Tumtum and Jiganus. It's a Sophic, each Isha, he's a Pasha, the Chayavim Mitzvah, because he held before that even though it's a Shaila and a Kronim, it's a Zman Grama, but he says the Shagasari had a big Arichus, that Nashim Archive, and Tashpisu, it's hookish to Balira, to Achilles Chametz. So he says, so if a Tumtum and Androgonus have Chametz, so Manashach, either there was Zachar in a cave, and both are Mechaya, both the Zachar in a cave are.
There's someone who holds the druggedness is brief. He's the asthma.
Yeah, he's right. But that's he's not going that. He's going to have.
But the druggedness is he's. Like he's just raising the question over here. Is that just?
I think if you hold that an androgynous is buried with Neatzmo, he also has all the mitzvahs that a man and a woman have. We're not machalik. But even if you hold if he's an androgynous, it's a buried with Neatzmo.
He has all the.
If a man is mechuyev and an isha is mechuyev, I think you hold an androgynous is mechuyev too.
So the question is that you don't know if he's putter like an isha's putter, but otherwise.
I think if they're both fat, but I'm not sure. The Gamma Nashim Chayavas, he says in this case by Tashpisu, since he said before that Tashpisu is not as man grama. And he brought a Shagasari that says it has the same halachas as Bayiron, it has the same halachas as Achilles Chametz. So Mela, he said he's going to be mechuyev in Tashpisu also. Now he says, Im yesh lo chametz she'asr ba'anoah below isr chametz. Let's say you have a piece of chametz that would have been asr ba'anoah even if not for the isr of chametz. Kamo, for example, you have tfuah shel kloi ha'keren. So it's asr ba'anoah al kloi ha'keren. Now the third din is, the Gemara says that chametz you're over by Yirah, even though chametz is asr ba'anoah. Usually chametz, something which is asr ba'anoah, is not considered b'shusa. But the Gemara says, Shnei d'Ramein b'shusa shaladim. The Torah put it in your rishus chametz and the bor. So the question in the Meforshim is, what about chametz which is not asr ba'anoah, which so it's chametz, but besides the isr chametz, it's asr ba'anoah for a different reason. Let's say it's asr ba'anoah as kloi ha'keren. Do you say that kind of isr ba'anoah the Torah never put in your rishus, or do you say chametz the Torah put it in your, just like if it's asr ba'anoah as chametz the Torah put it in your rishus to be over? So it's asr of kloi ha'keren also. It doesn't make a difference. The Torah put it in your rishus. Or do you say no, it's kloi ha'keren, and the Torah never put kloi ha'keren in your rishus to be over? So that's what he's discussing now. He says the yesh lo chametz, if he has chametz for asr ba'anoah below isr chametz, even if it wouldn't have been for the isr of chametz, kamo tfuah shel kloi ha'keren, im kein yesh lomer de lo ukmi rishuso ela machmas isr chametz. This cloud the Torah put in rishus was only if it was asr of chametz. The Torah put in rishus to be over. Avalim b'lavachi asr ba'anoah. But if it anyway was asr ba'anoah without being chametz, without the problem of chametz, like kloi ha'keren, lo ukmi Torah, maybe the Torah never put it in rishus. So that's a whole big shaila in the Achronim. Kvar ha'iru bazah ha'achronim. And he says in the bottom of the Achronim, Gadim. Shalos of Shivas. Who's Shalos of Shivas? Merechas chametz and matzah. I guess that's Shivas. So it should be Gadim. I don't know. So he says, and he says he's going to go into that shaila. Kvar iru bazah achronim. This shaila, what if it's asr ba'anoah for another reason? He said the Torah put it in rishus or not. So you view vur. He says we'll go into that shaila, but allow the Baal Yirah. When it gets to the Baal Yirah, we'll talk about that shaila. Galam gam b'lav ha'chiyesh lomer. And then there's a different story. He's saying b'chamas kloi ha'keren. Kivin de l'srei f'kloi. But since kloi ha'keren you have to burn, kasusim at the shear, we have a rule that when something you have to burn is considered without the shear, the ain kizayas, and you don't have the kizayas, the ain muzir al chamesh kloi ha'keren, the ain l'kam and ma'ad l'bayirah. We're just going to discuss kasusim at the shear. So there's a whole big problem. There's a whole big shaila what kasusim at this share means, and the means is considered, since you're going to have to burn, it's considered like it's already burnt. What does it mean? It's considered like broken up and not together. You don't have the share, but it's there. Just that it's not considered together. So he's saying if Kloya Kamra has to be burnt, could be it's consistent with the share, and it's not considered a kazayas, and therefore there's no Yisurim on a rice and chametz less than a kazayas. So he says. So he's saying that there's two shilas when you have chametz of Kloya Kamra. One is that the Torah put it b'rishus, or you say no, it's asma, no, it's not b'rishus, so you're not over by your rabbi matzah, because eating you're going to be over, of course. But Erev Pesach he's talking that there's no issur to eat it, and it's only a shilah of tashbisu, and it has a din of like bayirah, so you're not over bayirah because it's not b'rishus. And chametz was a special, the Torah put it in b'rishus, but not if it's Kloya Kamra. That's one shilah. Then he says there's a different shilah that Kloya Kamra you have to get rid of. And normally we say by Kloya Kamra ksusim eftis Shiur, so maybe it's like you don't have a science.
Is the issue of Isser Chal Isser? Kloya Kamra would be right at
it would be already also about Kloya Kamra. Right. I mean, so the Isser of chametz.
Yeah, like unless there's already an Isser, unless you want to say the Isser.
What are we talking about? We're talking about the Isser of bayirah by matzah. So he's saying we're talking about the Isser bayirah by matzah and tashbisu. So what's an Isser Chal Isser? I mean,
or I guess I'm just thinking in terms of the definition of chametz. If it's already also it's Kloya Kamra, that would predate that would precede it becoming chametz. So
no, I don't think so. I think chametz is chamer would be chal, and
chametz is chamer because this occurs.
But we're talking about Erev Pesach. What he's talking about is even Erev Pesach when you don't have an issur of eating chametz, you only have tashbisu. Right, so then there's no issur. This issur of tashbisu is nothing to do with.
And issur of chal issur is tashbisu.
Or bayirah and Pesach. Okay, but he said he's going to discuss these inyanim when it comes to bayirah matzah. Now he says, let's say a person doesn't want to do tashbisu, he doesn't want to get rid of his chametz. So the rule is, by all essays, there's a rule, if a person refuses to do an essay, we beat it up, most people learn that means literally, you actually kill him if he refuses. That's a principle by every essay. Why should tashbisu be any different? Why shouldn't there be a din of kofi? When there are some mitzvahs that we say you're not kofa if they're matan skar b'sida, like keep it up, and the Gemara says you're not kofa if it's matan skar. But this is a regular essay, so why shouldn't the essay apply? Vevesi b'mitzvah kodemus v'inyan mechuyev l'fazer mammon. He says as far as how much money you're mechuyev to spend to be mekayim tashbisu. So he says, I discussed this in the last mitzvah, that l'inyan essay, when it comes to a mitzvah essay, the din is mevur b'shulchan aruch or Chaim siman tafresh then vav sif aleph the einu tzarach l'fazer ela chomish mamono. You're only mechuyev to spend the fifth of their money to fulfill to be mekayim an essay. If it's going to cost you more than a fifth of the money, you're considered like an honest, so you're not mechuyev. But in this tapak nu, so the more says like this, by an essay you're mechuyev the fifth, by a losa you have to spend all your money and not to be over. So then he had a shaila in tapak nu, so we had a shaila by a lav she'ein bo ma'isa ma'idino. In other words, is it technically telling in an essay or a losa? So lav she'ein bo ma'isa would be a losa. Whereas the point is, an essay is you have to do an action. So the Torah that mechayev you more than a chomish, and by losa you're being over an issur with a ma'isa. Like you're eating chaz or whatever it is, so you have to spend all your money. So lav shem ma'isa then would have it done like an essay. So you had a suffix, and stapak nileil lav shem ma'isa madino achkan. But he says we're not talking about a lav shem ma'isa. We're talking now on the mitzvah of tashbisu. So he says achkan came in an essay. We're talking about a regular essay. Im kain imenu yochel l'kaim essa ashi yafazer amono. So it's just like a regular essay. And the din would be you only have to spend the chomish and don't have to spend more. Some people even usher to so he says only in tzarech. It's not so question. Some people hold it's even usher, but generally they say in tzarech. But dafka b'yadala. He says this that I say you don't have to spend more than the chomesh on the yadala, where you only have you only have the esser, and you don't have by yamatzah. Because by Yerah, by Matzah, most people will start at night because it says Shiva Siyami. The lek alav, the by Yerah. So for sure, you're not going to be mechuyev to spend more than a chomesh. Chol essay the ein sarach levaza is yoser mei chomesh. Kach nira lechora bepshitas. Okay, so lechora before the zman iser. I don't think it's the nogay of the chomesh because you could always be mevatel the chometz. Right? If you do bittul according to Rashi and Makayim Tashbisu, so you could do, so it's never going to cost you a chomesh. I mean, because it's never going to cost you a chomesh, and even if your bittul is not Makayim Tashbisu, you could be mevatel and get out of the chiv of Tashbisu. But after chatzos, where it's already usher and you can't do bittul, so now if a person realizes he's got to do tashbisu and he's mechuyev in tashbisu, so it's going to cost him a chomesh to do tashbisu, and he can't do bittul. Much let's say his chometz is far away, and he's going to have to take a plane, whatever it is, to get there. And if it costs him more than a chomesh, he wouldn't be mechuyev to spend more than a chomesh, and there's no bar yirah. Amnam, he says this is not so pasha. Amnam sarachiyan usfaras haran b'yuma, and I'm not sure what he's going to say. As far as Haran b'yuma, the la'inyan cholish yesh bo sakana. So a person's a cholish yesh bo sakana, so you're over Yisern to sakana. So the din is mechal and Shabbos b'sis skila v'lo yochel nevelos. There's a big machlok with Yishanim. It's better to give him nevelos, which is only allowed. But by nevelos he's going to be over and every kazayas b'fnei atzmos. He could be over 5 times nevel if he needs 5 kazasim. Or is it better to shecht and to be over it, which is Shabbos Eskila is more chamer, but it's only one action. So that's the machlok Yishanim. So he says the Ran Shita is the Chalon Shabbos B'Sis Skila. It's better to do Chilul Shabbos when it is a Skila below Yochel Nevelos and don't give him Nevelos. After Nevela who Rak Lav, they come up and keep him the Bechol Palm over, but he's going to have to be over. We're talking about a case where he's going to have to eat more than one his eyes. The Harbi Siri Lab and Chomer Yosem Mr. Skila Pamachas. That's what the Ran holds. Ayin Shama v'Shulchan Aruch or Chaim Tzimshon Chatziv Yadawa. In Kinef Shalomer. The Chol mitzvahs esek igon mount of lulav adomeya enu over ela rega achat b'sof hayom. Shalom nato lulav alo achalos. He's only going to be about the liyaseh once, right? If you don't take lulav that day, you're not over b'chol rega b'rega. You're only going to be over the essay if you don't take it that day. So it's a question of once. Now, could be, he says essay kazeh, but this essay of tashbisu, the over b'chol rega, calls man shachamas b'shuso. He says every rega you're over lav in kain harbe isuri essay kazeh after the chamer milav echash yesh b'maisa. He says could be this is more chamer because the Torah says to get rid of the chametz. You're not allowed to have the chametz beside the tashbisu. He says and you're over every rega. He says, "Kamo the chomer harbi lavan miyisur skila," and he says, "After the kol shekenu." And here, if many lavan are more chomer than a skila, he says could be that many essays that you're over chorega are more chomer than one losa, plain losa. So in a losa you have to spend all your money. Could be here also. After the kol shekenu, in kain kim the lav sheish b'maisim avur shachanarach yeradeya if shitas the sarp lavazve is kamamano. In kain kan nami. Now he's assuming that tashbis you're over b'chol rega, which is a whole shiloh among the achronim, but some are mechavdim the tashbisu of Erev Pesach and the tashbisu of Pesach, but it's not so pashut. He's assuming that tashbisu you're over b'chol rega. Refrat him namer the mitzvah echad shenismesupek primigalim arachaim sim tafresh and vav ba'eshel sivka and ches the after apple lav shein bo meiser. After over Shevi Altas, we come up and start with Vazbe's Kalma Mono. The Lav Chomer may essay, as long as it's a Lav, you have to spend your money, even though it's aimed at Maisa. And can you value near the Harbi Essen, the Shevi Altas, the Kmoken Chomer, Milav Echad Shein Bo Maisa. So he says it's Mustafa that many Essen Shein Bo Maisa, as is Chomer as a Lav Shein Bo Maisa. Ach, the Efshir, the Chomer Gamkein, Halav Milav Sheishemais. But he says, could be it's even more Chomer than Halav Sheishemais. Like even the Ika Harbi Yisurin. V'chol Regal Regal over. Imkein Efshir Tzarach Lavaza is Kol Mamona Kmo Lav. I think it's totally, if this tashbis is not a key mitzvah, even if or it's like an Isser Asay, tashbisu, and if you're not tashbisu, it's like you're over having chametz. The Pashup Shah tashbisu is just a key mitzvah, not an Isser Asay, so it's not so clear all his...
But then you're over every rega.
Huh?
If it's a kiyum essay, once you destroy it, then you're kind of the essay. You're not.
Yeah, but I'm saying even if you're over the kiyum mitzvah, there's a new mitzvah every rega, and you're being levatel the mitzvah. But it's not so pasha to compare it that it's more chomer to even an isra of Ainbo mice, because that's for a lot, and this is only a. But if it's an isra, I hear it much better.
It's a little bit. I think what's bothering me also is that attempting to make like kavah chumash from rational idea right at the beginning, you have an inherent problem. In other words, an essay, you can kill the guy to become the essay, but he can't spend more than 20%, or let's say he's bound by 20% not to become this. For a love, you don't kill the guy.
That's not so pashut. The Minchas Chinuch held that by a lav also.
Because he argued right.
He said he would be by a lav also to kill him if he's refusing to keep the lav. Was it machlokas? But I think the Minchas Chinuch was the one that said that.
Because I'm just saying that once you have that sort of like illogical comparison that you can kill the guy, but he can't spend 20%, and it's hard to apply.
Now, so the Gamlin Yeshiva, as far as what tshuva you do, the al essay to tshuva mechaperes. If you're over an essay, you do tshuva. After the essay kozeh chomer milosa. So, but he says this essay that you're over kol rega v'rega, so maybe it's not so pasha you could do tshuva like a regular essay. Im kein ein tshuva mechaperes ala im yom kippurim kedin losa. So maybe an essay that you're over kol rega v'rega, since you're over kol rega v'rega, has to be treated like a losa in sarachin. Okay. We have time just to finish the pira? Or I have yeah, we have time. So let's try to do the pira. Im yesh chametz and meshkenosav over gamken lo sasa shnemer sor lo yimatzi. What's it referring to? That someone gave you, let's see, what the Chinuch said, over lo yishbisu, bitul esed to the shbisu. He says, you're mevatel the mitzvah. Im yesh chametz and meshkenosav, if someone gave you a mashkin chametz, over gamken lo sasa shnemer sor lo yimatzi b'techem, and that's called, you have it in your betechem. But ein lokin alav zeh lo asa b'maisa shalachi lav shem b'maisa ein lokin alav. So here the Chinuch is mashla that, but if you did do a maisa, you would get malchus. And it's nearer to the Minchas Chinuch. Usually, his old machlokes have been Chinuch and the Rambam. If it's here, he's saying it's a chiluk if you do what a maisa or not a maisa, which was the Rambam said by chametz. It's clear, it's not like the other chametz. Im yesh chametz and meshkenosav over gamken lo sasa shnemer sorli yimatzi. Avlein lokan alav zeh b'chora lama hevi rav and mechaber davar zakan the iri b'yudalad. The yudalad. And as we're talking about Yudalad ain't over Bayirah. That starts at night. Kenir Medivir Rama, that Bayirah starts at night. The Afsho, and I told you, remember I told you there's different Rashis. Some Rashis are Master Bayirah starts at Chatzos. The Afsho Daito, he says, since the Chinuch brings us over here, Afsho Daito Kadas Rashi, Bavakamlu Chavteslan Beis, Mishesh, Mechatzos Yudalad over in Bayirah. The Ayin, Vanoda B'Yehuda Madura Kamal, or Chaim Siman Chav, Daito the Gama Rambam Sferle Kain, that the Noda B'Yehuda sheet is that even the Rambam holds Bayirah starts at Chatzos. The Yilvur Lakami, so I'm going to go into this Machlokas if Bayirah starts at night or at Chatzos. When I get to the Lav of Bayirah, which is not too far away, we're in mitzvah test. The next one is the Chilus Matzah, the next one is Bayirah. V'ayin Lakama and the Parashas Re'eh B'Lav the chametz erev Pesach. We hold there's a not like Rosh Hashanah. We hold there's a law to eat chametz erev Pesach like Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe Sham the chametz aser erev Pesach. Over there the Rambam brings. How do we know the chametz aser erev Pesach? He brings the kimta that by his source that it's aser. L'chsiv ach b'yom harishon tashpisu. L'chsiv shivas yamim. Right. Uve'emes. That's what the Chinuch brings. I think he means. Uve'emes. The Rambam doesn't bring abaya. Because he had a whole book shaila that Abaye and Rebbe was a machlokus if it's a tashbis is a shevel tas or tambasa. He was totally in that Abaye and Rebbe. So, but the Rama maybe came was halacha Rebbe from the Rabbi was Hishbar Chomas Bar Zitchi. The Yevur Sham Barucha, that could be there's a different understanding of between Abaye and Rebbe when the Isra of Chametz comes. Okay, so we'll stop here. We're going to start Achilas Matzah next time.